The Commonwealth has accused Karen Read of striking her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, with her car after a night of drinking and leaving him in the snow to die. The defense is saying, as they said in their opening statement, that Karen Read was framed and this is all a cover-up. While we are at the morning break of day 15, Jen McCabe is on the stand under a vigorous cross-examination from Alan Jackson. While there have definitely been points where the two are sparring and Jen McCabe wanted to be the one asking the questions, Alan did have his Camille Vasquez moment, are like, no, I'm asking the questions. That's how this works. The points that I've taken away from the cross-examination that were most impactful to me, other than the overall tone and demeanor of the cross-examination, was that Jen McCabe in prior testimony said that when she was texting to ask John O'Keefe where he was, she was going to the door or the windows, looking at the SUV, texting, "Where are you? Hello?" and that sort of thing, which makes sense just from a human behavior logic. If you are waiting and now the defense has put a timeline on it, anchored on the text messages, which is very helpful because we have something that has a timeline that is not someone's memory, but anchored on the text messages, 19-ish minutes that the SUV is outside of Fairview. And she's texting, "Here, pull behind me, hello," and is going back and looking at the SUV while texting John O'Keefe. So we now have a period of time where she has gone and looked at the SUV, and her testimony on cross-examination was 6 times in a course of 18 to 19 minutes. And in that time, she never saw John O'Keefe hit. She never saw the SUV back up. She never heard anything, never heard a collision, never saw anything out of the ordinary. And then when she looked back out and the SUV was gone, she saw nothing in the yard and was very evasive about the fact that she wasn't looking at the yard. She was looking out at the street. Keeping in mind this house is up several steps, so not only does she have the high ground, but an unobstructed view of the yard. So Alan Jackson got into a cross-examination about peripheral vision, and if there was an alligator in the well, you are testifying and looking at me, wouldn't you see it though? The point was made. The judge did sustain an objection. It was a bit argumentative, but, as alligators in courtroom are wont to do. So how many times she looked out the window and did not see an accident was helpful timing, I think, in how this case is moving forward. Then we started getting into her state grand jury. But Alan was talking about what happened when she got home from Fairview and then switched gears. And you could see the witness waiting for the question about how long to die in the snow and what she was doing on her phone when she got home. And he switched gears back to the grand jury testimony. And it seems, and I am very curious what happens on redirect with the prosecutor on this, it seems that at the grand jury for the state in April 2022, just a few months after John O'Keefe died, that she never said in testimony that Karen Read said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." And Alan Jackson went through 12 different points in the testimony where she was being asked about what Karen Read said. And Jen McCabe was testifying to versions of, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And one said, "You never said," she said, "I hit him." And her response to that was, well, I don't really know if I was asked in all of this if she said that. So on redirect, it'll be very interesting to see if there is more to that testimony or if that testimony is as it appears to be, which is 12 different times she testified about what Karen Read said, and every single time was a version of, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? And there was much testimony about where Brian Higgins' mystery Jeep is and whether or not at this point it's invisible. We are now starting to get into the answered calls that show answered on the phone but don't show answered in testimony at this point, where there are phone records from the extraction of Jen McCabe's phone that shows that she called her sister, Nicole Albert, and the call was answered. And she's like, absolutely, I did not talk to my sister at 6:07, 6:08 that morning. And Alan Jackson asked a very good question, I think. So you're as sure that you didn't talk to your sister as you are that Karen Read said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. At the end of day 15, which was a half day in court, well, Jen McCabe is still on the stand for cross-examination, and we haven't even gotten to the googliness of 2:27 a.m. We've talked about deleted phone calls. We've talked about as the defense puts it, off the books meeting at Officer Lank's house, where this witness testified that she and Carrie Roberts went to drop Carrie's daughter off at Officer Lank's house on the 30th because Officer Lank's daughter and Carrie Roberts' daughter are good friends, and Officer Lank's wife came out and chatted with Carrie. And Carrie's a talker. I think we've heard that about 16 times at a minimum, that, Carrie's a talker. So we might have been there 45 minutes. But as the defense was asking on cross-examination, isn't that the day after Nicole Albert texted, "We'll know more tomorrow"? So what was in that conversation, and when did it get disclosed? And it seems that maybe it got disclosed during the federal investigation, but the jury doesn't know about that specifically. They know that there were other proceedings, and they know that this was discovered later. But what we also heard at the end of the day is that Carrie Roberts will be the next witness from the prosecution, and I am dying to hear it. But I want to hear from the cell phone experts now more than ever. It seems that there are phone calls on the Celebrite extraction from victim John O'Keefe's phone that show multiple phone calls to his phone from Jen McCabe, but that on Jen McCabe's extraction, those phone calls were deleted off the phone. But what we know about Celebrite is the extraction of the phone will show you if calls have been deleted and what have you, but the records from the cell carrier will show if those calls went through, were answered, went to voicemail, what have you. This is why the defense was so pressed about the phones that were rehomed, because the phone records from the carrier don't show that. You need both the physical phone extraction and the carrier records to show what was deleted. There was so much information about deleted calls and texts in the Murdaugh case. When we get to the evidence from any experts, I'm very interested to see the timeline of the digital evidence. And it feels like on this cross-examination, we're finally starting to get some timeline of the digital evidence that did not come in direct. We also heard the defense read the full context of the text in this group chat that was when Matt McCabe texted, Julie said, Channel 4 is at D&E. Tell Chris to tell them the guy wasn't in the house. It makes sense there. So even though that was brought up with Matt McCabe, we didn't hear, to my memory, the full text message. Matt McCabe said, no, them is Channel 4, but we didn't hear them read the full text. Matt said that's not the full text. So is that overreaching on the defense when they are leaving out parts of text? I don't think the full text looks great, but I think the leaving out the context also doesn't look great. There is so much in this case that is odd, that doesn't make sense, that is very strange behavior. I don't know if the defense needs to make it more than it is, because what it is not great. It's just so odd to me why some things are being reached for when there is truly so much here in this case. There is lots of group texts going on talking about this case. I'm at the point where I just want to see the digital data. Everything else makes no sense to me. The deleted calls, the butt dials, the calls that are answered, but none of the witnesses say they are answered. Just bring the cell experts. We'll see what happens tomorrow. There's a lot more cross-examination to go, isn't there? And from the defense is really the first time I'm hearing that the prosecution thinks that the victim was incapacitated between 12:29 and 12:50. If it was said in opening statement, I missed it, or I can't remember it, because so much was in opening statements, it was very hard to follow. I just want to see the phones. I want to see the phones from the victim. I want to see the rest of Jen McCabe's extraction. I want to see Karen Reed's phone. Just bring all the phones. But the prosecution has to prove this case. And so far, there's a lot of information missing 4 weeks in. For deep dives into the stories that I covered here, you can find them on my YouTube channel at The Emily D. Baker and The Emily Show podcast. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday. The podcast goes live on Wednesdays. And if you want to stay in the loop with everything I'm doing, receive the fastest notifications out there, and get more Law Nerd community, join me at lawnerdapp.com, our free app for iOS and Android.